The gravest crime against humanity. That's how the United Nations General Assembly has voted to recognise the transatlantic slave trade.
The gravest crime against humanity. Not a petty crime, not a minor offence, not even a serious crime. The gravest crime. And you wouldn't believe who is against the impact of the gravest crime. Let's dive in. They finally admitted the gravest crime against humanity. But why some are saying the time is now, but a black leader says no. This is what we will uncover. But not only that, there are other leaders who fought robustly against what is the gravest injustice ever imposed on a specific people. For over 400 years, one of the greatest crimes in human history was denied justice, and in many cases forgotten. Millions taken, cultures erased, identities broken, and now the world is finally starting to admit it. But here is the question no one is asking. If the truth is finally being acknowledged, why are some still saying no?
The United Nations on Wednesday voted to recognise the transatlantic slave trade as the gravest crime against humanity. The resolution was led by Ghana and was adopted despite resistance from the US. Over 50 countries chose to abstain, including EU member states. The resolution marks a new step in Africa's efforts to seek accountability for historical injustices where millions of enslaved people were trafficked over centuries. It urges countries to consider formally apologising for the atrocities that occurred and providing financial reparations, as well as for cultural artefacts looted during the era to be returned.
While many people around the world welcome this move, a minority of people and leaders rejected it. And what I'm about to uncover will shock you, because there is one particular individual that you did not expect that person to reject this sort of move, because it serves justice and it is in their best interest that this is done and reparation is paid out for the injustice perpetuated against a particular group. We'll uncover that in a minute or so.
It's a move towards justice and healing. The UN General Assembly voted to recognise the transatlantic slave trade as the gravest crime in human history. On Wednesday, Ghana's President John Mahama came here to the UN in person to promote this resolution put forward by his country.
We come together in solemn solidarity to affirm truth and pursue a route to healing and reparative justice. The adoption of this resolution serves as a safeguard against forgetting.
This resolution calls for formal global recognition of this historical crime and opens the door for reparatory justice measures. It also urges the restitution of stolen works of art. Well, the vote in the General Assembly was passed with 123 votes in favour, 3 against and 52 abstentions. Argentina, Israel and the United States were the 3 members that voted against the resolution. France and the UK were amongst those that abstained, whilst
Recently, I've put out a video about Africa contemplating joining the current war that is going on between Iran, the United States and Israel. And there is a particular country, to which I'll come to in a minute or so, that voted against the resolution. And it is, in my view, one of the gravest hypocrisy in modern history. I'll develop that as we go along throughout the video, because what you will learn will definitely be intriguing and historic for your knowledge.
Irugaba suggested that Uganda could enter the ongoing conflict between Israel and Iran in support of Israel.
But yet Yasharel was one of those countries that voted against reparation. That is one of the gravest double standard in modern history, because in 1952 Israel received reparations from West Germany. This was as a result of the Holocaust survivors. Britain also gave some reparation recently in 2013, which is for the 1950 Mau Mau uprising against the Kenyan people. So there is precedents set for reparation that should have been paid for the gravest crime ever committed against humanity. But what is even shocking is that a member of parliament in the UK said that reparation should not be something we should consider, and says no. In a landmark moment at the United Nations, African slavery and others and its lasting impact have been pushed back into the global spotlight, with growing calls for recognition and even reparations. To many, this feels like justice delayed. To others, it's a line that should never be crossed. And that divides is now louder than ever, even within the black community itself. Kemi Badenoch, a descendant from Nigeria, born in the United Kingdom and is the opposition leader in the Conservatives Party, is reportedly saying that Britain eradicated slavery, which I'll prove to be incorrect later on, shouldn't pay reparations. She was also reportedly say on record that it is a scam. Would you believe it?
This is the past. We need to talk about the future. There are many countries now who want to use guilt to try and exploit the UK. They ask for reparations. I saw it as a trade minister. It's not culture wars. I was at the WTO. I won't name the minister from another country. And he was telling me that we needed to give up some of the things that we were doing because of colonialism and because they needed time to develop. These arguments are a scam. Don't fall for it.
A scam, Kemi? Really? Seriously, a scam? Are some black people suffering from Stockholm Syndrome, self-hate or PTSD, post-traumatic slave disorder? Although Kemi may not fit into that last category, but for her to be saying paying reparation is a scam, that is disappointing and shocking.
We need to make sure that we put this country first. We work well with our neighbours, we work well with other countries, but we have to look after ourselves too.
Well, I mean, those advocating for reparations would say, shouldn't we just make up for some of the damage we did through the slavery? As a black woman saying that, they may find that hard to understand from
Yes,
you.
many people would find the position that Kemi takes hard to understand. I don't. But because while some are saying the time is now, a prominent Kemi Badenoch in the UK is saying no. No to reparation, no to reopening the past, and that stance is sparking backlash, confusion, and a deeper question about identity, history, and truth. And it is not my place to say who anyone should marry, but maybe Dr. Umar Johnson, a prominent psychologist, might be able to explain what is going on here.
White people were calling Venus and Serena monkeys, apes, animals. They were not put out the tennis matches. Remember, there were white people asking for Serena Williams to be tested to make sure she was not a man. They were calling her a transgender, Art, on the field, bro. So you got these two young black women, trailblazers, kicking ass all over the tennis world, being disrespected about their hair, their body, their beautiful chocolate skin, their lips, their nose, their buttocks. I love both of them sisters. I love them both, Art. It hurts my soul to see Serena Williams marry outside the race, but I know why she did it. She had been made to feel unattractive. Venus and Serena were the victims of psychological trauma at the hands of white America. It was this America that did that to Venus and Serena. White people traumatized them two sisters, Art. And that's why, although I don't agree with Venus's recent decision to marry a white man, I don't agree with Serena's decision to marry a white man. At the end of the day, Art, these two women went into a hostile, white-dominated sport and took it over, and white people never forgave them for it. And in doing that for us, this is how I look at it, Art. And Venus and Serena sacrificing their childhood and their adulthood to show black girls what was possible on the tennis court. The collateral damage was their self-hate. And in order to rescue their self-esteem, they married outside the race because neither one of them wanted their children to look like them. And they didn't want their children to look like them because they didn't want their children to be subject to the same type of ridicule and hurt that they suffered. I'm not giving an excuse because it's unacceptable, but I am giving a psychological explanation for Venus and Serena's behavior.
Do you agree with Dr. Umar Johnson's assessment of what he believes the reason for these behavior? And if you do, write it in the comment section. Say that you side with Dr. Umar Johnson. But this isn't just politics. This goes deeper. Because after centuries of opposition, something else can take root. Silence, division, even what some describe as a kind of historical conditioning, where the pain of the past becomes something people are taught not to confront. But does racism play a part in this conditioning? I mean, even Kenny Badenoch's predecessor seems to accept that racism is a problem in the UK.
The publication of today's report on the killing of Stephen Lawrence must lead to new attitudes, a new era in race relations, and a new, more tolerant and more inclusive Britain.
One young black girl had to change her name to Elizabeth before she got any interviews at all. This, in 21st century Britain, is disgraceful.
That means fighting against the burning injustice. If you're black, you're treated more harshly by the criminal justice system than if you're white.
And what role does racism played in the decision making for those countries who abstained from voting for the resolution and those who rejected it?
Shouldn't we just make up for some of the damage we did through the slavery? As a black woman saying that, they may find that hard to understand from you.
Well, there are many things that the British Empire got wrong, but there are many amazing things that the British Empire also did. And we need to be honest about that and stop pretending that it was all bad. The British Empire ended slavery, the Atlantic slave trade. We need to talk about that more.
Well, you may have won over the audience, but I'm not sure you will win over the black votes by that statement. And I've heard many people saying that you will never be the Prime Minister of the UK. So I heard you said that British abolished the transatlantic slave trade. Well, let's put that to the test, Kemi. Let's see if you're correct. So whilst I accept the work of William Wilberforce that he partially abolished slavery, and the work of Clarkson, who spent some time trying to do a campaign and try to persuade William Wilberforce to take the fight to Parliament in 1787, the work already started in what we call Santo Domingo, which is what we call Haiti or Dominican Republic at this present time. And while William Wilberforce was considering abolishing slavery, but on the night of the 22nd to the 23rd of August 1791 in Santo Domingo, which is today Haiti and Dominican Republic, an uprising began that would be extremely important in abolishing slavery. So while William Wilberforce passed the law in 1807, on the 1st of January 1804, Haiti already became the first nation to permanently outlaw slavery and grant autonomy to citizens. And slavery didn't abolish straight away, because British colonies continued until 1833 to 1834. So we must give credit where credit is due, and factually, Kemi Badenoch appears to be incorrect. Now, long before the abolition was signed into law, before figures like William Wilberforce became symbolic for the change, there was Haiti, a revolution led by the enslaved that shocked the world and forced history to move. And yet, even that history is rarely told in full. So what are countries waiting for to pay reparation, which helped build their economy because it was a lucrative business? The reason the United States gave for rejecting the resolution, Ghana flatly rejected that reason.
The resolution was the United States. Were you disappointed by that vote?
So I would like to comment on the reasons they gave. They sought to create the impression that the time for negotiations have been short. The president of Ghana served notice last year in September. Immediately thereafter, we put together a broad-based coalition, including experts, academics, researchers, historians from all regions of the world. And we commenced negotiations. We allocated 3 hours, twice the time, and had multiple rounds of negotiations. So there are some that to us, it is clear that even if we gave them 50 years, they would say that the time is not enough.
Well, the transatlantic slave trade was the catalyst to the Industrial Revolution, and no enterprise was more profitable and more lucrative than the slave trade itself, and therefore other countries profited and benefited from the slave trade, and therefore they should give back to those who worked for free.
I hope you don't think that the money made from slavery just dissolved and went up into the air. It went into companies and businesses, and not even tracing and blaming those corporations. Those corporations hired people and paid their salaries and their benefits and gave them the ability to raise families and to pass wealth on through the generations. This money is what made America financially stable. The market value of slaves in 1860 was greater than the market value of every railroad, factory, and bank combined. Follow the money, because the money we're talking about was huge.
But what did the slave get out of all of that wealth? Nothing. What did the slave owners got out of that wealth? Compensation.
If they were going to lose their slaves, they wanted to be compensated.
So who were compensated?
Did you know slave owners in America were once paid reparation for losing slaves? When slavery was abolished, many believed freedom meant justice, but for the government, justice meant paying slave owners. In 1862, the US passed the D.C. Emancipation Act, ending slavery in the capital. But instead of compensating the enslaved, the government gave up to $300 per slave to their former owners as reparations for lost property. Over 900 slave owners filed claims. The enslaved, they received nothing.
Britain freed the slaves in 1833, then paid slave owners $20 billion, and British taxpayers just finished paying for it in 2015. Let me say that again. 2015, you paid for slavery compensation, not to the enslaved, to the slave owners. August 1st, 1833, Britain passes the Slavery Abolition Act. Sounds noble, right? Here's what they don't tell you. Slave owners demanded compensation. They said freeing enslaved people was theft of their property. The British government agreed. August 1st, 1834, slavery officially ends in British colonies. But here's the deal. The British government pays £20 million to compensate 46,000 slave owners. In today's money, that's 17 billion pounds, over 20 billion US dollars. Who got paid? British aristocrats, members of parliament, the Church of England, wealthy merchants, plantation owners across the Caribbean. How many enslaved people were freed? 800,000. How much did those 800,000 people get? Nothing. Not land, not money, not education, not reparations. Nothing. But it gets worse. The British government didn't have 20 million pounds sitting around. So they borrowed it, took out massive loans to pay slave owners. Those loans, they weren't paid off until February 2015. 182 years. British taxpayers paid for slavery compensation for 182 years.
It's now your turn to sound off in the comments section. Where do you stand on this? Do you agree that countries like Britain should not pay reparation? Or do you believe those affected deserve compensation after centuries of injustice and justice is not yet served? Let's have a debate and a discussion about this. So I'd like to thank you very much for your time, and I shall see you on the other topic.